Have you ever been told something so mean that you still stay up late at night years later thinking about it, trying desperately to fall asleep, but your brain just keeps replaying those comments for you over and over like the world's worst Netflix movie? Yeah, I see you guys nodding. Well, here's a piece of feedback that I got a few years ago. Fatemah is an excellent writer. Sadly, that's the only thing she's ever going to be. Fatemah can help you develop soft skills in that you learn to deal with difficult people, because she's the most difficult person you'll ever face. I got this feedback from a colleague of mine. Let's call him Ron. And I initially really liked Ron. He had a lot of great ideas. So I decided to spend more time with him one-on-one and give him feedback on how he can improve. But right before I did that, I promoted someone else instead of him. And I didn't take the time to get to know him professionally or understand what his goals were as a person either. I didn't do enough. That's what I thought when I saw the feedback. I didn't do enough. I need to do more. I need more face-to-face time with my teammates. I need more visibility. I need more control. I need to do more and more and more. So that's what I did. And soon I was working 80 hours per week. I had become so singularly obsessed about controlling each and every aspect of my business that my colleagues soon started resenting me for it. Comments echoing Ron started trickling in, highlighting what a control freak, what a micromanager I had become. Finally, one of my colleagues, Bushra, confronted me and said, "Fatemah, you need to give people space to adjust to all of these changes that you're rolling out. You need to give people space to grow." That was the wake-up call that I desperately needed to stop my business from crumbling. A little bit of background, I run a career coaching business, and we help people with interview prep, salary negotiation, and with their resumes. And in fact, here is a resume that I was looking at recently. Okay, so they had their first job as a streetcar conductor, and they quit a year later for maternity leave, and then they did some gigs in acting, writing, working as a fry cook, as a nightclub performer, and for procuring sex workers. I've been doing this for a long time. I promise you, this is not the most unconventional resume I've seen. I've seen more interesting stories than this, but let's see what they have in the bottom half. There's an education section with more than 50 honorary degrees. Okay, that has to be a typo. I know the Dalai Lama has the most, and he only has, let me look it up real quick. Dalai Lama, he only has 40. And no real degrees in the education section, but there is an honors section. This person was nominated for a Tony and a Pulitzer Prize, and they served on 2 presidential committees? I look at a lot of resumes on a daily basis, and my gut reaction is that either this person is lying or they are so professionally inconsistent that it's difficult for me to take them seriously because they just come across as really flaky. But let me tell you guys a little secret. I actually wrote this resume based on Maya Angelou's Wikipedia page because I feel that Maya Angelou is the ultimate representation of bouncing back. Despite her unconventional early career, Maya Angelou went on to becoming one of the most successful authors in the world and changed the face of literature forever. Yet despite this profound achievement and all of the other amazing things she's done, such as being a celebrated university professor and administrator, such as achieving fluency in 5 languages, such as creating a very successful product line for Hallmark, and for being the very first Black woman on the back of the Quarter. Despite all of these profound achievements, Maya struggled heavily from imposter syndrome. In fact, here's a quote from her. "I have written 11 books, and each time I think, Uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. They're going to find me out. I relate hard to that quote, they're going to find me out. If people saw the real me, not the me who's a best-selling author, not the me with the tens of thousands of social media followers, not the me with the hundreds of thousands of people that read my blogs, but the real me, the woman behind that mask of those numbers, they'd see a failure. For example, Ron, the one who left those comments for me, the one who said that the best thing I was for is for teaching people how to deal with difficult people, that Ron, he wasn't even my biggest professional failure. I had this wonderful colleague, Zarar, who was so good at customer relations that I made him in charge of all of our email communications. Yet time and time again, Zarar would ask me for a promotion where he could interface directly with customers on the phone. And each time he asked, I refused because I had such a big ego and I was such a control freak that I had this weird fear that if I let anybody else speak to our customers, either A, they'd mess up so badly that my business's immaculate reputation would crumble, or B, they'd be so good at it, they'd realize they don't even need me and that they could work with our customers directly and become a competitor. And so Zarar left, and he went on to becoming a very successful customer service manager at a Fortune 500 company. But my business flatlined for 5 consecutive years. 0 growth for 5 years. Until Bushra gave me that wake-up call that, hey, you need to give people space so they can grow. That was my biggest professional failure. Late at night, I still stay up thinking about what an idiot I was for letting Zarar go like that. I'm not alone in sitting up and obsessing over my mistakes, right, guys? Ma'am? Yes, sir? Well, even highly successful people do that. For example, Stephen King, when he wrote his first novel, Carrie, he felt so unable to relate to the book's main character that he threw the manuscript away. Luckily for horror lovers like me, his wife found the book in the trash can, and she was like, babe, you gotta try again. Well, I don't know if she calls him babe, I made that up, but that's what she said. She said, you gotta try again, and now we have the Stephen King that we know and love. A more extreme example is of John Kennedy Toole, who felt so dejected by the constant rejections he was facing as an author that he ended up taking his own life. A few years later, one of his manuscripts was published posthumously and went on to winning a Pulitzer Prize. As we can see from the examples of Maya Angelou, Stephen King, and John Kennedy Toole, this voice, the one that constantly nags you and says that you are not enough, it's not a voice rooted in reality, but in our deepest insecurities about our blemishes, the mistakes that we've made in our personal and professional lives. In my case, my blemish is that I left my degree halfway completed because my career coaching business took off, or at least that's what I tell people when they ask why I'm a college dropout. But one of the real reasons why I dropped out of UCLA is because I took off a quarter to recover from a major surgery, and when it was time for me to sign back up for classes again, I just couldn't. Going to UCLA was really hard for me. I had to take 2 buses from Torrance to Los Angeles, and the entire ordeal would take 4 hours out of my day. So the lame reality of me being a college dropout, I was exhausted. When I was in my 20s, me being a college dropout was really cute. People would be like, oh my God, you're just like Bill Gates. He was a dropout too. But this was embarrassing for me to hear. Me, like Bill Gates, with his billions of dollars, and how his foundation pretty much eradicated polio from the face of this earth? Yeah, right. When I was in my 30s, with my business being only moderately successful, I knew I was no entrepreneur. I was no Bill Gates. I was just a small business owner with no real qualifications and no degree. And when someone like Ron criticized my management style, saying things like the only thing I'd ever be good for was teaching people patience, that insecurity would flare up painfully. Is this because I don't have a degree? Is this because I never learned how to formally manage a business properly? But going back to school now, in my 30s, as a working mother, sitting next to kids half my age, studying painfully difficult subjects like C++ and data structures, taking notes while struggling to remember basic calculus? Yeah, right. I'm just not smart enough for this stuff anymore. I fixated on this blemish, and I rationalized that I couldn't push further anymore. Do you guys fixate on your blemishes too? Like maybe you wanted to major in English linguistics, but didn't because you got a C in English composition in high school. Or maybe you always dreamed of becoming a politician, but tabled that dream when you got a rejection letter from Harvard. Or maybe 3 of your classmates got jobs at your dream company and you didn't get an interview, so you stopped networking and applying completely. So yeah, even though I was fully recovered, I just didn't have the confidence to go back to school. But when ChatGPT came out, everything changed. You see, I have always had this dream of providing high-quality career coaching services, not just to the people who can afford it and pay for it, but to underserved populations, people who could benefit from the impact of these services most. And seeing generative AI in action made me realize that AI was the way that I could serve all of those people for really low cost, or possibly even for free. All I had to do was learn how to develop a hyper-customized, super accessible, AI-driven career coaching app that fed on massive sets of economic data, like business closures and openings, to help people pinpoint, position themselves for, and then win high-paying, highly fulfilling jobs. And this dream was just too overpowering for me to ignore. All right, guys, we're gonna take a quick break. I want you all to please stand up. Everybody, please stand up. Everybody. And I'm gonna count to 10, and while I'm counting, I'd like you guys to bend down and touch as far as you can go. So if you can just hang out here, that's fine. If you can touch your toes, try touching the floor. And if you can touch the floor, try putting your hands flat on the floor. But you can't bend your knees, okay? So let's go. 1, bend over, everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, thank you so much. We're gonna do that one more time, not for 10 seconds, just bend over and see how far you can go, okay? Everyone bend over and try to reach, and you'll find that you've been able to stretch just a centimeter further. Thank you so much, you guys. You can sit down. You see, this act of stretching actually helps us push further than our limitations. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, I'm not good enough, I can't stretch as far as so-and-so person, I'm not going to be good at linguistics, I'm not going to make it as a politician, I'm not going to get that job, reframe. You're not good enough, you're learning. You're stretching beyond your current capabilities. So yeah, I took my own advice, signed back up for school, fearing that I would fail programming, fearing that my younger, more agile, more knowledgeable classmates would want nothing to do with me. But the exact opposite happened. Every time I talked about how I'm back in school so I can learn how to build this app, everyone listening encouraged me, gave me critical feedback, and pointed out valuable resources that helped me push further along the product development cycle. And now we have a minimum viable product in place. And really, what was I even thinking? Like, they'd be like, ew, we don't want to hang out with senior citizens born in the 1900s because that's too cringe. So I was writing this TED Talk, and I was like, I want to make this line, I don't want to hang out with senior citizens, that's too cringe. I want to make that like really accurate. So I texted one of my classmates, and I was like, hey, Noah, what do you guys say for cringe these days? Is that still a thing? Like, do you guys still say cringe? And he was like, no, we say whack. And I said, whack? That's what I used to say in the 90s. So you see, I'm not cringe. I'm just vintage. We've evolved into a world that celebrates college dropouts for starting businesses, celebrates business owners for going back to school, celebrates working moms who transform their entire careers because they want to make their dreams come true. We've evolved into a much more forgiving place where we value vintage women, where we value resilience and growth over flawless track records. And this evolution, this change, it's not just about accepting our blemishes. It's about seeing these scars as valuable lessons that can inspire. Maya Angelou did not just forgive her blemishes, but instead, she used them. She drew inspiration from them to write stories that changed the world forever. And now, it's your turn. How can you stretch into your blemishes and find your superpowers?